In nature, in the animal world, in the human world, no one is lesser, inferior. No one has the wrong color skin. No one has the wrong color eyes. No one belongs to the wrong club. Whatever it is, that is the transformation of otherness. I see you. If I listen to you with my whole being, if I engage with dialogue, what do I see? I see the calling forth of your essence. I engage with your essence, essence to essence. No other there. Essence to essence. Can you do that, please? Can you find places to really dialogue where it's hard and difficult? I do that as a practice. I'm working with 40 Israeli and Palestinian psychiatrists and psychologists. By the way, there's nothing more difficult. Not the Israeli-Palestinian thing, that's difficult, but the psychiatrists and the psychologists, they always have another angle. I have another angle on the problem. It's like, wow. Stop the ranting. You know, I could say that to myself too, right? Stop the finger pointing. Our activism that we're talking about must be the engendering of solutions, not the pointing out of problems. If we don't know the problem now, you know, whatever the universe has for retro, work, you'll be sent there. Yeah. I feel there's more in there, but I don't know how to address it. Because we're conditioned. We live in a conditioned mind. You know, Krishnamurti, Immanuel Kant, I'm getting a point here. Immanuel Kant says, dare to know. And Krishnamurti says, liberation is freedom from the known. So somehow we have to dare to know the unknown. As Sequoia in his invocation, in his prayer this morning said, Aluna, we talked about, maybe it was last night, Aluna in the Kogi language is the great mystery. Even in modern physics, there is a sense that the universe is pulsed, that it's here and it's not here, that there is always a space between this definite reality and the totally indefinite reality, between the realization and the pure potentiality, between the latent forces that could be, that might be, and what is now. There's always an isthmus, a breathing space, something that says, something new could come in here, something could change the story, one attitude, one glance, one dialogic gesture might, in fact, come through that space in the universe. So the universe breathes. If you meet someone who has hypercoherence, you'll see that there's no space in their truth for your truth. You need a space. The universe is built around those spaces. Those sort of suggestive spaces, those ambiguous spaces. Those subtle spaces where my truth and your truth can dance, can play. If you have hyper-coherence of the truth, I call it rigor mortis of the truth. Every dot lines up. I can prove to you everything about everything you ever needed to know. I used to get emails at the Institute of Noetic Sciences with these equations and then a little, as you can see, I've proved the nature of the universe. Okay, good. Let there be, isn't that Kahil Gibran? Let there be spaces in your truth for my truth. That's how dialogue begins. Paradox, ambiguity, subtlety is not wimpy. It's not weakness. You're not weak if you're ambiguous. If you live in the place of I don't know, you're achieving what the mystics long for. I don't know. Oh, good. We've got one who can put something in. As one of my spiritual teachers said, James, I want you to stop praying for a while. I said, what? He said, stop praying. You're making yourself a saint. He said, how can you be written on if the page is full? Be a blank page so that you may be written on. Be a blank page. Have an emptiness, a space for the other to come in so that you too can have an evangelical experience. I mean this. I love that evangelical sense of I am willing to be transformed by the moment, by the evidence of the moment, by a miraculous intervention. That's a high stance to be in. You don't need to attach fundamentalist stuff to it. But that sense that you can be open and that you have a space for evolution to say, you know what? I have the next best idea. I have the next best version. And in dialogue, finally, on that question of dialogue, how did you get here? You know, I hear so much condemnation of others of the past, how wrong they were, and if only they had done this, and if only, you know, they had made those choices, they shouldn't have done that. And how did you get here? You got here because they were the way they were, right? You are the product of all of that evolutionary effort. You are the sum total, as Sequoia says, of actually everything in the universe. From the beginning of creation, you are the summa of that learning process. So if you need to let the other go, hospice it. Hospice work is not about condemnation, it's about that essence work. I see your essence, you are moving into another domain. So dialogue is vital, and it needs spaces. I ask you again, how often do you listen with your whole being to the whole being of another? How are we doing on time here? We're good. We have a little bit more time. Consciousness. There's so much about the nature of consciousness that we need more time to unpack that. But in some central way, we understand that we're moving in consciousness from more duality to less duality. From the duality of right versus wrong, good versus bad, to something more sophisticated, something more nuanced, something more subtle. I actually believe, as I wrote in an article recently in Cosmos Journal, that the so-called average person is getting this sense of inclusion at greater and greater levels. How do you look at stress? It's one of the, I think, very, very fundamental questions to look at in relationship to consciousness, because everybody says, well, stress, you've got to get rid of it, right? Stress! Ouch! How do I relax? How do I take my yoga class? How do I get out of the stressful world? That's a duality. That's saying there's stress and there's relaxation. I ask you, how do you go into the stress and transform the negative stress? Look at any great prophet and teacher of this planet. Look at Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King. They embraced the stress. This primary energy in the universe that is your teacher. And if you do this to it, who's doing that? That's the ego saying, surely there's a shortcut, surely there's an easier way, surely you don't have to spend all that. So you don't have to give your heart to that, right? That's the ego. It's stress avoidant. The ego is very stress avoidant.